Good morning, I'm Gretchen Hall. It is a Friday, the 27th day of June, bringing you Morning Matters. Because your mornings matter, let's get to the stories that matter today. The Department of Justice is aiding the International Criminal Court, or the ICC, with witness protection in the case involving former President Rodrigo Duterte. However, the DOJ maintains that this cooperation does not constitute a recognition of the ICC's jurisdiction over the Philippines. Tensions are escalating over Vice President Sara Duterte's looming impeachment trial, with House lawmakers now opposing the outright dismissal of the case. Members of the House of Representatives are arguing against any possibility of throwing out the complaint without a proper hearing.
Are you more powerful than the Constitution? The bigger question is, ayaw nyo bang marinig yung gustong marinig ng taong bayan?
And transport authorities are raising alarms over increasing fatal road accidents in Metro Manila. In response, the MMDA is considering infrastructure upgrades and a reduced speed limit of 30 kph in urban areas to curb the increasing fatalities. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda, Senator Coco Pimentel criticized the COMELEC's decision to reinstate Marcy Teodoro's candidacy, calling it a mockery of the Constitution. Teodoro, meanwhile, defended the ruling, saying any appeal must be based on a clear legal right. Here is the report.
The Commission on Elections (NBANG) has lifted the suspension of the proclamation of Marcy Teodoro as the elected congressman of Marikina City's 1st District. In a resolution dated June 25, the COMELEC NBANG reversed an earlier ruling by its first division, which had canceled Teodoro's certificate of candidacy over alleged material misrepresentation of his address. With this decision, Teodoro's COC has been reinstated, clearing the way for his formal proclamation. COMELEC Chair George Garcia said the poll body would wait 5 days for the ruling to become final and executory before proclaiming Teodoro. In a statement, Senator Coco Pimentel slammed the COMELEC's decision, calling it a mockery of the Constitution. He claimed the ruling, released after 6 months, was a deliberate maneuver and vowed to raise the issue before the Supreme Court. Teodoro, for his part, said the petitioner has the right to elevate the case, but only if backed by a written essay or an established legal claim. He also maintained that he, not the petitioner, was the one who properly waited for the COMELEC NBANG ruling.
Tama lang naman yun. Hindi ko naman sinasabing mali at karapatan naman niya yun. Yun nga lang, meron tayong tinatawag sa batas na right in essay. Dapat maipakita niya na siya ay may exhibited and enforceable right. Ang totoo, kung tutusin, ako yung naghintay ng matagal at hindi totoo yung sinasabi ng petitioner, naririnig ko na sila naghintay ng matagal. Hindi. Ako naghintay ng matagal dito sa decision na to at buti na lang lumabas ng ganitong panahon na bago magsimula ang Kongreso.
Teodoro won the race by a wide margin, securing 75,062 votes against Senator Coco Pimentel's 29,091.
And to talk more about this development, we have COMELEC spokesperson Attorney Rex Laudianco. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us again here on Morning Matters.
Magandang umaga po, Gretchen, at magandang umaga po sa lahat ng tagapakinig.
Attorney Rex, medyo maanghang po ang mga salita ni Senator Coco Pimentel regarding this decision. Ang sabi po niya, babasahin ko lang, this reversal is not just a legal setback. It is clearly a betrayal of the Constitution and the democratic process. It sets a dangerous precedent and opens the gates of electoral hell. And it took them 6 months to cook. Ano po ang inyong reaksyon dyan?
Ginagalang naman po natin ang pahayag ni Senator Pimentel dito, pero kung makikita po natin talaga, kaya rin po siguro inabot ng ganong katagal, talagang nag-deliberate po ang bawat isang miyembro ng COMELEC patungkol dito. At kung mapapansin nyo nga po, nabanggit din ni Chairman Garcia, kasi yung unang ruling po ng division dito ay naganap pa nung meron pang nauna na commissioner at napalitan na po sila dahil sa pagretiro at syempre naman po kinakailangan din makisali sa deliberation ng mga bagong commissioners at kung makikita nyo naman po na ilatag naman din sa desisyon yung mga naging basihan kung bakit ni-reverse ang ruling ng First Division. And by the way, ang boto po dito ay 4 in favor, wala pong nag-dissent at ngunit 3 po ang hindi nag-participate kasama po si Chairman Garcia dahil meron po siyang previous professional relations sa magkabilang panig.
Paano nyo po na-settle, para lang din malinaw po, no? Paano nyo po na-settle itong residency issue ni former Mayor Marcy Teodoro?
Dahil una po sa lahat, hindi maitatanggi na si Mayor Teodoro po ay multi-term mayor ng buong Marikina City, 1st and 2nd District. At malinaw din naman po sa records na ipinanganak siya dun sa distrito kung saan siya tumatakbo po muli bilang congressman. Nagkataon lang po na lumipat siya para tumakbo sa kabila, ngunit na-establish niya pong muli sa pamamagitan ng kanyang pagpaparehistro, sa pamamagitan ng mga ilang ebidensya pa na ilatag, na siya naman talaga ito toong nakatira na doon sa distrito na kung saan siya tumatakbo ngayon. At sabi nga po ni Chairman Garcia, pagdating naman po talaga sa requirement ng batas, pati na rin ng saligang batas, kung bakit kinakailangan yung residency requirement. Kung maalala nyo po, may residency requirement talaga yan po ang dahilan po dyan para hindi isang estranghero, hindi isang stranger ang mahalal doon. At masasabi po natin na hindi stranger si Mr. Teodoro dahil doon nga po naging multi-term mayor siya ng buong Marikina City kasama na ang 1st at 2nd districts.
Siguro ho yung tanong naman po ay hindi naman sa kung hindi siya kilala ng mga tao doon, ano? Kasi malinaw naman po na mayor po si Marcy Teodoro ng Marikina. Pero I guess the question is, the accusation here is that he only started living in the 1st district a few weeks before the start of the COC filing period. At matagal daw siyang nakatira sa Barangay Tumana dahil nga po doon nga siya dapat tatakbo, pero nung nakita raw niya the odds were stacked against him, siya ay lumipat dito sa 1st District. Paano po na-settle yun at na-prove ni Mayor Marcy?
Opo, iyan nga po yung aligasyon. Ngunit dun po sa paglalatag ng desisyon ng Comelec Bank, na ipakita rin po na kinulang naman din sa ebidensya yung pong mga kumukontra dun sa pahayag at laban dun sa mga ebidensya rin na ilatag ni Mayor Teodoro. Una na sa lahat, yung kanilang basehan po, yung mga testimonya ng mga nakatira doon na hindi naman po kalapitan talaga o hindi naman direktang nakakaalam, nakakakilala kay Mayor Teodoro. Ikalawa na rin po siguro ang pinagbasihan po nila yung mga naunang driver's license at iba pang dokumento na talaga naman po pwedeng mapalitan at pwede naman pong mailipat. Ang pinaka-importante po kasi dito, nung siya po ay nag-file ng kanyang registration, napatunayan niya sa pamamagitan ng utility, sa pamamagitan ng iba pang ebidensya na siya talaga ay nakatira dun sa bahay kung saan niya kiniklaim na residente siya. Hindi naman po na kontra yung mga ebidensya na yan. Pangalawa po, yung base po pinagbasihan din po kasi nung kaso, kung tama po ang pagkakaalala ko, ay yung mga ilang kaso nung nakaraan. Hindi naman din po tama na permanente na yan dahil ang tandaan po natin, meron po tayong tinatawag na domicile of origin, meron po tayong tinatawag na domicile of choice. At sa pagkakataon po ito, napatunayan ni Mayor Teodoro na nanaig yung kanyang domicile of choice nang siya ay lumipat na muli ng kanyang residence.
So ang kanyang domicile of choice ay sa 1st District at ang domicile of origin sa 2nd?
Hindi po, nanggaling po siya doon sa 1st, tapos po lumipat po siya sa 2nd at muli po siya nag-revert doon sa kanyang original domicile of origin na siya na rin po tinuturing natin ngayon na domicile of choice dahil nga po sa kanyang pagpaparehistrong muli sa naturang distrito.
At ang basihan po ay domicile of choice for 1 year.
Tama po kayo at nakalagay din naman po dun sa ating Certificate of Candidacy na I will be a registered voter of. Pwede po talaga nung sa panahon ng pagpa-file ng COC ay maaring hindi pa kumpleto yung residency requirement. Pero tatandaan po natin lahat po ng requirement mula dun sa residency requirement para sa eligibility na makakandidato, residency requirement para sa eligibility na makaboto ay nakabase po sa araw ng halalan. So nangyari po dyan, tumutugma na mahigit po 1 taon na siyang nakatira doon sa araw ng halalan noong May 12. Yun po kasi ang date of reckoning at hindi yung mismong araw ng paglalatag ng kanyang COC.
Okay. So, pag sinabi po nating 1 year before election day, so dapat po siya ay nakatira doon ng May 2024.
Dapat po, mahigit po doon. No? So yung pagkiklaim naman po ninyo doon ay mahigit 1 year na po yan. Nangyari lang po siguro talaga nung nilatag niya, then I will be a registered voter of. Nangyayari po talaga yan, pati naman po sa ating mga botante kasi 6 months residency requirement para maging botante, 1 year residency requirement para maging kandidato po sa isang local government position. Ang importante po doon, yung point of reckoning ng residency po na yan ay yung the day before the elections. At yun naman po ay fully satisfied ng party dito.
Of course, this conversation is relevant only if the good Senator Coco Pimentel, if ever, kung hindi po naging ganito yung pasya ng COMELEC, ay kung siya po ang mag-a-assume. Kasi second placer siya. And recently, the Supreme Court has decided to abandon the second placer rule in election cases. Does that mean kung sakasakali po i-reverse po yung decision na ito, ay hindi naman din ma-appoint o ma-elect si Senator Coco Pimentel o mauupo?
Dalawang bagay po muna siguro bago ko sagutin, Ma'am Gretchen. Una po sa lahat, yung decision po ng kataas-taasang hukuman ay nais din pong mag-file ng motion for reconsideration ng COMELEC. Hindi para kontrahin, kundi para bigyan linaw yung ilang bagay. So ito po yung lumalabas, hindi pa rin final at executory. Tinihinday po namin na magkaroon ng finality rin ito. At ikalawa, yung decision din po pinag-uusapan natin dito sa case ni Senator Pimentel at ni Mayor Teodoro ay hindi pa rin naman po final and executory. May 5 araw po talaga para umakyat pa sa kataas-taasang hukuman si Senator Pimentel at dyan po, dahil dyan, hindi pa naman po ito final and executory. At yes po, kung sakali mo magiging final na ang desisyon ng ating kataas-tasang hukuman,
So the
ganun po talaga ang
declaration
bagong
by,
doktrina.
ministers,
Hindi na po makakaupo yung
in the
second placer
conference
kung hindi po
yesterday
talaga
was that
mangyari
government
yan,
will commit to
magkakaroon
ensure
ng
every birth
vacancy doon sa
registered
posisyon.
and every death in Asia in the Pacific is low.
Para meron po yatang nagsalita, no? Pero okay, so if ever po ay mag-a-apply po 'yon, yung hindi na maaaring umaupo si Senator Coco kung sakasakaling maging final and executory. But from your end, what are you getting from the Supreme Court? Kanino po mag-a-apply yung void second placer rule?
Opo, tandaan din po natin na dun sa doktrina po na bago na yun na inabandona, yung second placer rule, ay naganap sa kaso ng isang local government position na meron po dun sa ating local government code na succession na pagka po naging bakante, naging permanently vacant, hindi naka-assume o katulad po nito na na-disqualify, aakyat either yung vice mayor, yung vice governor, yung first councilor, and so on and so forth. Ngunit pagdating sa mga posisyon na walang succession, tulad po ng sa senador, tulad po ng sa member of the House of Representatives, wala pong succession dyan. So ano po ang mangyayari pag na-declare na permanent vacant? Maari po talaga yung special elections. At ito po yung nais idulog ng COMELEC. Hihingi po kami ng paglilinaw sa ating Supreme Court na kung yun ba talaga ang kasama sa doktrina. Pero yun nga po ang sinasabi natin, kung sakali man po na maging final at executory, hindi po nagsusukat, kumbaga po hindi eksaktong yung desisyon do sa mga Dodato versus COMELEC dito po sa kasong pinag-uusapan natin.
Special elections for referring to the House of Representatives, is that correct?
Tama po kayo dahil nga po kung mananaig ang desisyon at kung bibigyan linaw na ng Supreme Court na talagang wala ng second placer rule kahit pa sa senator, kahit pa sa congressman at ang pamamaraan lang po para may manalo dyan, magkaroon ng special elections po talaga specifically for the position na naging bakante po.
Okay. Dito nga po sa cancellation ng registration ng Duterte Youth, ano pong inaantay po natin para maiproklama yung mga susunod na, yung papalit po dun sa 3 seats nila? Sino po yung maaari, no? Kung sakasakaling ito po ay maging final and executory rin, yung cancellation ng kanilang rehistro, sino po ang maaaring umakyat dun sa congressional seats?
Tama po kayo. Doon sa una po na hindi pa naman din po final and executory decision po dun sa Duterte Youth dahil ito po ay naka-motion for reconsideration din. At anumang araw po ay lalabas na yung decision din ng COMELEC and Bank. Kung sakali man po dumating sa punto, hypothetically na talagang kakansilahin na kahit ng COMELEC and Bank yung kanilang registration, hindi po natin masabi kung saan pupunta ito. Maari po kasing dalawa ang kapuntahan nito. Yung mga nakatanggap na ng seats ay maaring madagdagan ng base sa recomputation po dahil tandaan po natin via computation using the Carpio formula po yung ating party list system of representation. Or pwede rin naman po manggaling dun sa mga hindi pa napoproklama na makakuha. Hindi pa po kami umaabot sa puntong yan na nagko-compute dahil nga po pending pa naman ang kasong ito at hindi pa naman po ito executory.
Okay, isa po kasi sa mga nag-aapela yung Gabriela, no? Sila po ay may posibilidad na makakuha ng pwesto?
Sa ngayon po, hindi pa po namin masabi yan dahil nga po gaya ng nabanggit ko, hindi pa naman po nagko-compute muli ang COMELEC dahil hindi pa naman final and executory decision po sa ating Duterte. And in fact, subject pa nga po ito sa decision ng Commission and Bank. Hindi pa po namin alam kung ano po ang kahihinatnan ng motion for reconsideration ng Duterte.
Okay, puntahan po natin yung kaso ng Duterte Youth, no? Ang issue po sa kanila is that they were not able to publish in two national newspapers and also to hold hearings na according po sa ating batas kailangan bago magkaroon ng accreditation. Tama po ba?
Tama po kayo dahil jurisdictional requirement po ang publication ng petition, ng kanilang manifestation of intent to participate, pati na rin po yung list ng kanilang nominees at mga officers kasama po ng order mismo ng publication na yan. At lumalabas po sa records na hindi po na-comply ang bagay nito dahil kung matatandaan po natin sometime in 2018 po nang nag-file ng petition for registration ang naturang grupo, ito po ay agad na-dismiss ng isang COMELEC division. Ngunit sa pagpa-file po ng kanilang motion for reconsideration sa Commission and Bank, ito po ay na-grant ngunit hindi nagkaroon ng pagkakataon at ng publication nga po na may tuturing. So pagdating po kasi dyan dahil ito yung jurisdictional requirement, lumalabas po hindi naka-acquire ng jurisdiction, hindi nagkaroon ng notice sa buong mundo para po magkaroon ng opportunity ang sino mang tao po na makapag-file ng opposition doon mismo sa registration o sa qualification ng kanilang mga nominees.
Pero kung kulang po pala ang kanilang mga requirements, bakit po sila binigyan ng accreditation to begin with? Because meron po, actually si Commissioner Ray Bulay, nag-dissent po siya dito, na sinabi po niya na ito ay responsibilidad ng COMELEC na i-check kung kompleto ang requirements pero nabigyan ng accreditation. Hindi po ba may responsibilidad din ng COMELEC dito?
Opo, hindi na po kasi ayaw na po natin na sabihan pa o hanapan ng pagkakamali yung mga naunang administration ng COMELEC. Malinaw din naman po sa records na talagang walang publication at nilinaw din po dun sa desisyon ng majority dito sa division, sa second division, na yung requirement po ng publication ay hindi lamang naaatas sa COMELEC, kundi talagang ito ay naaatas na i-comply at alam po dapat ito ng lahat ng party list na nagpaparehistro na merong requirement sa kanila na magkaroon ng publication. So whether or not inuutos, dapat po sila mismo ang gagampan sa responsibilidad na ito nang sa gayon maging tama ang kanilang registration. And at the same time po, ito naman po tingin ko kasama sa kanilang apela dun sa kanilang motion for reconsideration. So hihintayin po natin anuman po ang magiging desisyon ng buong Commission and Bank sa bagay na ito.
Kasi kung iisipin po natin sa konteksto ng isang korporasyon, kapag ikaw ay nag-apply sa HR ng trabaho at sinabi at tinanggap yung application mo, tapos years later sasabihin, ay kulang ka pala ng requirements. Hindi ba parang responsibilidad din naman ng HR na siguraduhin na kompleto yung papeles bago ka payagan, no? Manungkulan.
Tama po yan. Tama po, meron nga pong bagay na ganyan. Pero tatandaan po natin sa bagay na ito hindi naman po makakapigil dun sa mismong korporasyon. Kung makita na talagang hindi kwalipikado yung nabigyan ng unang pagkakataon na makapasok, pwedeng bawiin yung kanilang pagkaka-entra dun sa bagay na yan. At sinasabi nga po malinaw sa linya ng mga desisyon ng Supreme Court, itong registration na binibigay ng COMELEC ay hindi ito entitlement, hindi ito buong right na hindi na mababawi sa iyo. In fact, ito ay parang prangkisa. Para daw po itong privilege na ibinibigay na kung sakaling mapapatunayan na hindi ka pala dapat nabigyan ng registration nung unang-una pa lang ay dapat talagang mabawi ito sa iyo. Hindi pwedeng papahayaan na lang na magtuloy-tuloy yung hindi kwalipikado na makakuha ng registration dahil lamang sa isang pagkakamali na nabigyan sila. Hindi po ito parang isang vested right na hindi nabawiin. Ito po isang pribilehyo lamang.
Okay, abangan natin ang final na executory na desisyon po dyan. Pero sa June 30, ang COMELEC it will be on its final day of jurisdiction over the elections. Ano po pa pong aasahan po natin?
Tama po, doon sa mga naiproklama po ng mga kandidato ay magtatapos po lalong-lalo na doon sa may hawak po ng sa House of Representatives dahil sila po ay ma-under na sa House of Representatives Electoral Tribunal at sa mga senador po ay sa Senate Electoral Tribunal. Pero pagdating po sa mga posisyon na panglalawigan at pagdating sa posisyon ng mga pangsyudad, ito po ay nananatili sa COMELEC. Ngunit tatandaan po natin kasi merong tatlong requirement para mawala ang jurisdiction sa COMELEC. Unang-una po dyan yung proclamation. So doon po sa mga hindi na po proklama, hindi po sila makapag-oath of office at hindi rin po makapag-assume. Pero po doon sa naproklama na ng COMELEC, wala na pong balakid kung sila man ay mag-oath at sila man po ay makapag-assume ng office. At tuluyan na nga pong mawala ang jurisdiction ng COMELEC insofar as the members of the House of Representatives at sa ating pong Senado.
Ihahabol ko lang po si Mayor Duterte, siya po ay, may word na po ba tayo kung paano mangyayari ang kanyang oath?
Wala. Pagdating po kasi sa puntong yan, wala pong jurisdiction ng COMELEC. Ang sa amin po ay hanggang proklamasyon lamang ng nanalong kandidato. Pagdating po sa oath of office at sa assumption of office, wala na po ito sa jurisdiction ng COMELEC.
All right, thank you very much for the updates. That was COMELEC spokesperson attorney Rex Laudianco joining us on the line. Maraming salamat. Don't go away. We'll be back with more stories right after the break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. A major breakthrough in civil registration is taking shape in Asia and the Pacific. At a high-level UN conference in Bangkok, countries, including the Philippines, have pledged to ensure that every birth is registered and every death recorded by 2030. And for the details, we are bringing in Joey Francisco, Senior Manager for News Content of One News, live from Bangkok. Magandang umaga sa'yo, Joey.
Good morning, Gretchen.
Okay, tell us all about the agreement to have all births and deaths registered. Ano bang napag-usapan dyan sa Bangkok?
Hey, Gretchen, so the declaration was made yesterday during the plenary of this convention at the UNCC here in Bangkok. So ang tanong na lang ng marami after that declaration that we will be ensuring, or the governments will committed to ensuring that every birth is registered and every death in Asia and the Pacific is recorded by 2030. Ay kung posible ba ito o kung reachable ba itong aim or dream na ito, no, ng Asia and the Pacific. So let's just go through some numbers, Gretchen, to see kung medyo malapit na ba tayo doon. So we have around 51 countries covered by itong ating region, Asia and the Pacific, hindi ba? So as of this year, 29 countries now register over 90% of births within a year, while 30 countries achieve the same doon sa tinatawag na death registration. So medyo lang pa sila sa ano no, sa kalahati nung aim ano, pero as it is there are still parang numbers na kailangan natin i-consider, like 51 million ngayong 2024 ang unregistered the children under 5 ano nung sila ipinanganak, samantalang 6.9 million naman na unregistered deaths per year ang naitatala until 2024. So parang meron parang mukhang reachable naman yung aim by 2030 or 5 years from now, dahil mga nasa 90s mark na tayo nung accomplishment ano, ay baka naman kayanin basta yung ano lang ano, susundin nila yung best practices ng ilan sa mga countries na nagawa na ito. So Gretchen, tutuloy ko na ha. Let's go to the data from the Philippines because the Philippines is the co-chair of this conference in Bangkok, ano, itong UN conference ito. USEC Dennis Mapa represented the country and led our delegation bilang part siya ng Philippine Statistics Authority. Ano. Sinabi nga lang niya no, na 95% compliant naman na tayo, meaning nakakapag-register na tayo ng deaths at saka ng birth, ano, at least 95%. Alam ko maraming pintas dun sa National ID System, wala pa tayo, na hindi pa na marami pa nagreklamo na wala pa sila na. Pero that's a different story dahil when it comes to actually like kung may mga anak ba ay nare-register agad, mukhang nakakomply naman tayo ng mga 95%, pero syempre ang aim is 99.5%, Gretchen.
Okay. But help us understand, Jovi, I mean, bakit kapag pumupunta tayo sa mga probinsya, parang karaniwang problema ng mga Pilipino ay wala silang birth certificate. Kung 95% na pala yung ating registration, nakapagtataka, bakit marami pa rin ang walang birth certificate nila?
Same sentiment. Actually, that's the question I ask USEC Mapa. No? Turns out kasi meron naman sa leeway, no? At least a year after birth, pwede pang ihabol yon. Ano? So siguro nakakapag-comply na by that time. Usually, pipilitan iba ano kahit mahirap because they're from siguro liblib na po ano sa mga rural areas, pupunta pa talaga sa city proper for the registration. Ano? Yun yung pinaka problema doon. At saka yung iba hindi sa hospital nanganganak. Alam naman natin, Gretchen, na pwedeng sa bahay nanganganak at ini-aid lang ng ano no, ng may mga professional na gumagawa nun, pero sa bahay nga gagawin. Pero kailangan nilang gawin yun at least a year, within the year ano, of mapanganak sila. Kasi kapag wala kang legal identity, nawawala nga naman yung, yung right mo for basic services na binibigay ng gobyerno. So kapag nagkasakit ka, kapag nagkasakit yung bata, o kaya pag kailangan ng mga ayuda. So yun na yung trigger point for them to really register.
Siguro gusto ko lang magkaroon ng konting kalinawan dun sa 95%. Ano yung sakop nun? Kailangan ba may birth certificate ka to be part of that 95% o yung barangay registration ay kasama na dun? Kasi yung barangay siguro yung mas mabilis makuha, ano?
Yung, I think ang pinag-uusapan based, well, at least implied doon sa conversation namin, yung kapag ikaw ay kailanganin mo yung birth certificate mo or yung certificate of live birth mo, ay makukuha mo. Ano? Di ba tayo kinukuha natin yan online? Ano? So, basta maibibigay sa iyo. Hindi lang doon sa level ng barangay.
Ayun, okay. So, pero pagdating naman sa death registration, anong mas mahirap? I mean, what is the bigger problem? Is it the birth or the death registration?
Okay, death registration is it's still important because kapag may pandemic or pag may mga disease outbreaks, it's more of that, Gretchen, ano. Pero kasi, kaya mas important, usually, although both important, sinasabi ng experts dito sa convention ito, importante sa live birth registration dahil doon yung magti-trigger na lahat ng mga public service na kailangan natin o yung maski yung basic human rights natin ay nakukuha natin from our government.
And then the death registration, what is the current rate of the Philippines
Okay.
when it comes to that?
Okay, it's 6 point, not in the Philippines, but at least hindi ko nakuha kay Yusek Mapa yung sa Philippines, pero yung at least yung sa buong region ng Asia and the Pacific, for this year 6.9 million yung still unregistered na hindi talaga na nasasabi or kaya ay dumaan dun sa legalities yung cause of death nila at nailista ng gobyerno. Yan, 1 in 3 deaths not legally certified. Yun ang nakalagay sa report ng UNESCO
Medyo
yesterday.
malaki-laki yun, ano? Oo.
Malaki yun.
Oo.
In the region.
Oh. Napag-usapan ba dyan ng yung extrajudicial killings or did people stay away from that?
No, but it was discussed kasi may mga Filipino journalists tayong kasama na tinanong yan at sinasabi na yun nga yung mga numbers ay di ba alam naman natin yung nangyayari na iba doon yung naging cause of death so hanggang ngayon unresolved pa yung iba doon dahil iba yung nilagay na cause of death so it happens kaya nga parang dapat yung government yung commitment nila is not just in the ensuring na registered yung every death and birth kundi yung correctness ng data, Gretchen.
When it comes to death registration, who has the right to do that? Is it the loved ones of the deceased or posible din na kung wari sabihin natin in the case of the sabongeros na nilagay sa Taal Lake, yung police ang magre-register? I mean, paano yung proseso pagdating naman sa death registration?
That registration, syempre, of course, family, pero eventually, kailangan pa rin sa institution like hospital and then to the authorities kung medyo may foul play. So, ganun pa rin yung process, Gretchen.
Okay. And then what are the commitments of the Philippines to make the targets happen?
Well, 95% na tayo as of this sabi ni Yusek Mapa kung hindi daw nagkaroon ng COVID at siguro malapit-lapit na tayo sa sa 98 or at least 99%. So well, aside from making those IDs or the national IDs more accessible sa lahat, meaning hindi na wala tayo hard copy although meron nasa system na tayo yung at least yung pagkatahi ng dalawa na meron kang data talaga but at the same time meron kang physical ID. Tinatrabaho pa daw nila yan. And of course, ang kanilang target is really information, especially sabi mga earlier in our conversation that yung mga far-flung areas, kailangan maabot nila yan. At maipaalam din sa mga kababayan natin yung importance of registering at least within the year after a live birth.
Maybe ease of registration should be one of
Exactly.
the
Kung hindi
processes.
makalapit, tayo lumapit, di ba? Yun yung parang idea nila.
All right, we hope we do reach our targets. But in the meantime, enjoy ka dyan. Padalan mo kami ng sampalok pagbalik mo.
Akala ko mango sticky rice, Gretchen Mahirap yata iuwi yun. Pero yes, ang palok madaling uwi.
Okay, maraming salamat. We have Joby Francisco reporting to us live from Bangkok. Meanwhile, the Justice Department has been assisting the International Criminal Court in protecting witnesses in the case against former President Rodrigo Duterte. But the agency insists that this doesn't mean it recognizes the ICC's authority over the Philippines. Camille Samonte with the details.
In the past, this was how Justice Secretary Boying Rimulya sounded when talking about the International Criminal Court and its insistence to probe the Duterte drug war.
Posisyon ko dyan, sasalubungin ko sa airport and accompany them on their trip back.
Oh, sasalubungin niyo pa, sir?
Oh.
Salubungin ko sila para they can take the first plane out. Sir,
Sir, what about, sir, do you mean, are you saying deportation? What do you mean, sir?
I-deport ba sila or what? Since you are in charge of BNI
so, buwi na kayo. Wala kayong gagawin sa Pilipinas. Kami, kung meron kayong reklamo, file nyo sa amin.
They will not even be empowered to issue subpoenas in the country. They have not even coordinated with us about it. So if they want to come in as a hostile government, as a hostile force, to come in. But they cannot do that to us.
Fast forward to 2025, former President Rodrigo Duterte has been in ICC detention since March. The DOJ under the same secretary is now coordinating, even helping the International Tribunal it once accused of overstepping jurisdiction and trampling Philippine sovereignty.
We already chose not to pursue the cases and let the ICC pursue these cases. Given that, it becomes also our obligation to help them because we are giving up our jurisdiction for their jurisdiction. Kasi nga, ang hirap na i-prove yung case dito at i-build up ang kaso dahil yung mga kailangan mong magsalita ay kasama sa krimen. Kaya komplikado rito.
Remulla stresses this is not flip-flopping on government's part, maintaining its position that the ICC has no jurisdiction on the Duterte case since the Philippines has already withdrawn from the Rome Statute in 2019. For now, 3 to 4 witnesses have been tapped to testify against Digong. They are now under the Marcos administration's protection while still in the Philippines. The DOJ has offered to fly them to The Hague when it comes time to face the ICC and recount what they know about Digong's war on drugs and the alleged abuses that went with it. But the Justice Department says it will not shoulder the travel expenses of these witnesses.
We will protect the witnesses, whatever it takes, because the prosecution will rely on these witnesses. Walang official communication, basta ito, dumating, we chanced upon this na lang, nung nakiusap, sabi ko, sige, pagbigyan. Alangan naman tayo pa humarang. Mahalaga, yung testigo, makarating na maayos ang kanyang testimonya para malaman natin kung ano talaga ang nangyari sa mga panahon na yun.
However, the DOJ calls it coordination or cooperation. Is this an indication of a new path for the parties? In short, could this mean the Philippines will rejoin the ICC?
That is another decision that we will have to make as a country. It does not mean that, but it just means that we recognize the International Tribunal in charge of the case. Kasi doon nga natin dinala si Pangulong Duterte, former President Duterte. So, yun lang yun.
For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
Stay tuned. Morning Matters will be back after a short break. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. Around 20 more Filipinos from Israel are expected to arrive in Manila this weekend. The Foreign Affairs Department said the arrivals could happen today or on Saturday, though final flight details are still being arranged. Now, this comes after the first batch of repatriates from Israel, Jordan, Palestine, and Qatar arrived Tuesday. A separate group from Iran is expected by Friday. Now, despite rising tensions, only about 150 of the estimated 30,000 Filipino workers in Israel have opted for voluntary repatriation. Let's discuss the government's repatriation efforts with DFA Yusek Eduardo De Vega. Magandang umaga po sa inyo, Yusek.
Magandang umaga po. Muna po.
Yusek, alam ko po busy po kayo, ano?
Magandang umaga.
Magandang umaga. Thank you so much for joining us first thing in the morning. Before we go to the repatriation and the numbers and the details of that, I want to know, no, amid all the missiles fired in the Middle East, where does the Philippines officially stand in the attack of Israel and the United States on Iran?
We're surely not going to take sides, except on the side of peace and diplomacy. And that's what we said while the hostilities were ongoing. And that's what we said after we welcomed the ceasefire. So we're not going to say that the U.S. or Iranians have our support in their attack, nor that Iran should be supported in launching missiles against Israel, because we always call for peace. However, yes, as a member of the International Committee of Nations, Iran has a responsibility to follow the program or the restrictions set under by the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna. So we just welcome the latest developments. So far, the ceasefire is holding, according to our ambassadors in the region.
From your point of view, were there clear violations by Iran on the regulations on the nuclear developments on their end?
Well, the last time that they allowed inspectors was May. So perhaps we have to see again. We need to hear the IAEA's pronouncements to see if there's something to do. Obviously, Iran would be in a position now, would be better positioned to discuss the matter with the agency after the ceasefire was announced, because even before, they were saying that they were willing to talk again in the U.S. About the issue. So hopefully that's a positive step. Of course, Israel's position is that this has been ongoing for years and they won't stop their nuclear program. Our main concern, of course, is peace in the region so that our millions of kababayan all over the Middle East would be safe.
But as a member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, they are subject to many inspections. But Israel, on the other hand, is not a member of that. Isn't it a little bit ironic?
It looks like it, and in the U.S. withdrew. So, again, we won't openly voice out anything certainly related to launching attacks on each other. You know, under international law, there is the prohibition of the use of force. Because Israel says it was self-defense, and so does Iran. We just say, stick to the path of peace.
Well, no matter what, I mean, the recent happenings have brought Iran, Israel, and the United States back to the negotiating table. Next week, there will be talks among these three countries. How confident are we that this will remain a 12-day war? How are we seeing events as they unfold? Ano po yung mga binabantayan po natin?
Well, ibig sabihin 12 days na hindi na tatagal pa, no? We're diplomats, so we'll be optimistic. Alam niyo yung classic statement, hope for the best, expect the worst. What does that mean? We certainly hope and express confidence, especially with USA's, shall we say, strong leadership under the current administration. We certainly hope that it will hold and that there will be some arrangement or agreement that will make it a lasting one. No? Because what we see is a seasonal exchange between these countries. But this was the most deadly. Because before, Israel might fire some spear missiles, Iran might fire some. Absolutely no threat to life and limb. But now there has been. But now we're hopeful. Nevertheless, when I say prepare for the worst, note on another topic, we're still repatriating Filipinos, as you mentioned, as the reporter mentioned. We're still encouraging them to go home. because the situation is still volatile or fragile. Of course, there's a return to normalcy in both countries. Both our ambassadors saying, especially in Israel, you go out the street and then people are canoeing or biking. While in Tehran, uh, days ago, weeks ago, it was somewhat being deserted. But now the people from Iran, from Tehran, including I'm sure Filipino wives married to Iranians and their families are coming back. And so there's a return to normalcy. Nevertheless, we'd still like to encourage Filipinos to go home. After all, there are integration programs in the Philippines. They're given financial assistance and so forth. No, we will study the recommendation to lower the alert level back to, in Israel at least, to alert level 2, meaning no voluntary repatriation. Pero may I explain? It doesn't mean pag wala ng formal announcement na please come home. It doesn't mean pag may humingi na ng tulong para umuwi, wag na, wag na. No, no, no. It's a standard. Filipinos in the Middle East, for example, who want to be repatriated are assisted. And it's not, as you know, it's not always because there's a threat of war or they feel insecure. In most cases, it's because they escape from their amo, at least in other countries, no, outside of Israel and Iran. So, tuloy yun. Kung sinong gusto umuwi, kaya may alert level of what, makakauwi. Tutulungan umuwi. So, yun ang bottom line.
Tutulungan umuwi at yung assistance, financial assistance of 150,000 will still be there when the alert level gets dropped to, to 2 or 1?
That's my understanding. Although I can't speak for Secretary Kakdak, but because they do make announcements on this, because that's their department's money. But when Filipinos are repatriated from abroad, it's a whole of agency approach. The DFA could pay for it, or the DMW, because we have a separate funds. But when they arrive here, sinasalubong sila. Not just by DFA and DMW, OWA, but even other agencies. The DSW is there, DOH is there, even sometimes there's congressmen there, with the offers or with the promises of assistance. Last Tuesday, when the 26 plus a few more from, as you mentioned, from Jordan, Qatar, and the West Bank arrived, 31 in all, along with Secretary Hans Kakdak, no less. It wasn't just BMW and DFA officials. Secretary Herbosa was at the airport and told them about the health services that could be provided them. DSWD is always there. So, tuloy-tuloy yan. As for the amount of financial assistance, that may vary. That depends on the DMW, because last year it was 150,000. Maybe, I hope it's not that bad inflation, but it's 150,000 pesos now. So, of course, excellent picture. You see, I'm OWA administrator to the right. Then there's a DFA official, and there's Secretary Kakdak and Secretary Boss, I believe, with him. That's excellent, and that will continue to happen once we have repatriations. There was mention of 20. We still don't have the flight details. Significantly, the batch used to be 50, now 20 na lang. So you know what it means. Probably the 30 backed out because there's a ceasefire now. So, pero tuloy-tuloy yan. Kung sinong, may alert level o wala, pag gusto ng Pilipino umuwi, tutulungan namin. Ang maganda lang kung may alert level, we're officially announcing it. We'd like you to go home. Alert level 4, again, I've said this, I'll repeat. You see, some were saying, bakit hindi alert level 4? Well, if we had made it mandatory, tapos ngayon may ceasefire, well, that would make it appear that we took a rash decision. Same now. If we say, let's lower it right away, what if this weekend may bombahan na naman? So, we take decisions measured, in a measured manner, no?
Well, we hope the assistance remains. We do know, as we mentioned, that this has been going on
si Presidente yan.
for a long time.
Utol si Presidente na tumulong. So, tuloy yan.
The Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy has urged the government to call for an immediate cessation of the conflict between Israel and Iran, citing that this puts at risk about 2 million OFWs, not just in Iran but it's in neighboring states. Help us understand, no? Paano po dikit-dikit yung ano kung sakasakaling the problem gets worse, hopefully it does not, but gaano kalaki yung epekto, no, sa mga Pinoy sa Middle East?
A few points there, no? About the call, no? And happy Islamic New Year. I was yesterday, but happy Islamic New Year to our Muslim brothers and sisters. Salam alaikum. Now, about the call. Well, we made that call in our statements before, no? Na matapos ceasing hostilities. The main issue in the Middle East, I believe, is not Israel versus Iran, but Israel and the Palestinians. So we've also called for a two-state solution. Remember, the current repatriation efforts began in October 2023 when Israel and Hamas had this issue, and it's a huge problem and a huge, return to hostilities. No, now about how this will affect the 2 million Filipinos. We saw it from this particular issue. The Arab neighbors did not seem to want to be involved because may kasabihan sa American English, I have no dog in that fight, or in Tagalog, wala akong manok diyan. In other words, not all have peaceful relations with Israel, and they have tense relations with Iran, which is a Persia, not an Arab country, and whose people are mostly Shiite Muslims. So, and perhaps Arab countries also are objecting to Iran's nuclear program. So, it did not seem to have a danger of spreading to other countries. Unlike, to give an example, when Israel started in around October 2023 or November, started striking at Hamas targets in Gaza, causing a lot of civilian casualties. It spread to southern Lebanon. The Houthis in Yemen also started firing. Iran seemed to have had a role also in counterattacks against Israel. This did not happen this time. However, if there is a spread, and we hope not, because that would mean World War III na yan, we do have contingency plans in place in every embassy in the region. How to repatriate thousands of Filipinos. We've done it before in Libya, Lebanon, obviously Gaza. It's going to be a challenge to repatriate over 1 million Filipinos in Saudi Arabia and at least almost 1 million in the UAE. But it most likely will not go to that level. It's also not just the Philippines. For example, we have to thank Malaysia and other countries provide assistance. For example, you mentioned Iran. We're going through the Turkmenistan border. Wala tayong embassy doon, but there is a Malaysian embassy. And they're offering assistance through to ASEAN Spirit para salubungin yung mga kababayan natin. Although we did send a team now from the DFA to reach them. And I believe even as we speak, they're on their way home already and will be arriving later this afternoon.
So that's the back door. Okay,
Yes.
because we're running out of time, one final question. There are fears, because you are preparing for the worst, as you mentioned. There are fears that the Philippines may get dragged into this through the EDCA sites. What is the possibility of those facilities being used to assist the United States? Is that something that's being talked about by the DFA?
Not yet, because, Secretary Manalo, who is still the secretary until the new secretary takes over next week, was mentioning yesterday that in his talks with Secretary Rubio of the U.S., this is not mentioned. We talked about the ironclad commitment between both countries. We may be a bit far for the EDCA sites to be used in the Middle East. U.S. has assets in the region. For example, Iran attacked the U.S. base in Qatar. And that really angered the Qataris, although there was no harm to any civilian or in Qatar. No? So perhaps we won't be involved at all. And besides, we do have good relations with all parties in the region. We have good relations with Israel, with the Arab countries, and even with Iran. Something that most countries, including the United States, cannot necessarily claim.
Kasi nung 2001, 2 months after the 9/11 attacks, the U.S. military actually refueled in Clark Air Base en route from Japan to the Middle East. So kaya ko po natanong yun. Pero I guess
Really?
the last statement weighs
Now I
more.
remember. Pero there's no, kasi it's not a full base. I mean, they're just sites, no, where for positioning, meaning, yeah. So I, if U.S. jets will fly, will come there, will go there. There's no refueling there, no. So if that's what you mean. Besides, why are we talking, Ms. Gretchen, of well, I know the media. Why are we talking about war? I'm a
No, because we
diplomat.
want to
We're
be
talking about
prepared.
peace.
We
We're
have to
talking
be
about
prepared.
peace. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk
You
about
talk to
peace.
DND, kung ganyan.
Yes,
And by
agree
the way,
with you.
any country has that twin approach. There's the good cop, bad cop. So I don't know how you call it. You have to defend yourself militarily. So there you have Secretary Giboy, the AFP. And then there's diplomacy. So there's the DFA. So you're asking me about war. Let's talk peace. Yeah.
Okay, and that's why we have just to balance our diplomatic
Perfect.
stance, to keep those relations with
Look,
Iran,
we
with
just
Israel,
had good
and the
news.
United States.
Yeah, nagkaroon ng ceasefire. There's good. That's good news. So if we keep talking the winds of war, parang I don't know, osmosis or something. Parang if everybody in the world was talking about that, it's like we're urging the Israelis and the Iranians to go back to firing at each other. No, we won't.
But have we taken a definitive stance on the nuclear arsenal of Iran? Have we denounced it, or have we made an official statement about that? Because there are arguments that what happened could actually spur them to develop these technologies further. Lalo na yung sinabi po ni Ayatollah, most sites are still in place and Iran is going to continue on its nuclear program.
We haven't made, at least not lately, a single statement to that effect. We're concerned about, first and foremost, our kababayans in Iran, no? But, of course, we're a member of the international community, so we support what the international community is saying, including you and Secretary General. Now, as for what you said that Ayatollah mentioned, that's not a surprise, of course. The Iranians will not suddenly come. You cannot expect them to lose face and say, oh, well, okay, we were bombed. Yeah, we surrender, we lose. No, they will say those things. But the U.S. and Israel have said that they have crippled, or even U.S. has even used, I think, the word obliterated Iran's capability. We'll see, because no doubt they're inclined to try again. But at least for now, I would believe it when they say that the threat of Iran developing a nuclear bomb has been diminished. What we could worry about is if this is just again now and then after several months we have to do it again, the U.S. will do it again. Hopefully not. So let's just, aside from that, we go back to the talk about the welfare of our kababayans. No Filipino has been injured in Iran. There is one injury in Israel, very critical, this lady, and yet she's surviving. That's a Filipino resilience. We thank Israel. They're paying. I'm sure it's not cheap, the medical treatment, and they're paying for it. So thank you, Israel. So
Keep up the good
ganun
work
po. We'll
when it
wait
comes to our balikbayans.
for the statement. We don't want to anger any
Yes.
country by making
That's true.
statements that might be misinterpreted. Thank you.
Okay. I want to shift the topic over to the former president. Of course, he is in The Hague, and there are questions over whether he will be allowed to take his oath, mayoral oath, to be proclaimed. Are there developments on that end?
As my secretary would say, this is for the DOJ. I must say, though, the DFA role in this, when he was brought there, I myself told our ambassador that he's still a Filipino citizen, so he's entitled to assistance if required. And what happened was the family went there, and they just went there in the height of winter, so we had to give them winter clothes. We even helped in securing immediate visas so that is Philippine lawyers
But could he
will
take
go
his
there.
oath
But
before the ambassador?
if he's allowed, yes, he can take his oath. The ambassador is how do you say, it's authorized under the administrative code to solemnize oaths. Of course, the consul as well. Um, we'll have to see what the ICC agrees. And we're not a member of the ICC anymore. His lawyers will have to argue this. We'll follow whatever is decided because we're certainly, if you mean, is the ambassador going to go to the cell and administer the oath there? No, because there's a legal theory that it's only within the premises of the chancery, the embassy itself, where our consular and diplomatic officials have that authority under international law to solemnize oath. So he'll have to be brought to the embassy. The thing is, will the ICC allow it? You never know. They might. They might. So, and we're not going to refuse it because if he asks, a Filipino citizen, I was brought here, I just want to have this oath solemnized. My oath of office.
I guess
I
we'll
don't
know.
think we will refuse.
Alright.
He won.
Oo, tama po kayo.
Hmm.
Okay, maraming
Bye-bye. I
salamat
have to
po.
go back.
Oo.
I have to every second spent, even on charming interviewers like yourself, is a second taken away where we could actually work to help our kababayan. So media, if I say no
Maraming
sometimes,
salamat
please
po.
understand. Ha?
Oh,
Bye-bye.
we
Bye-bye.
understand.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much
Have a
for
good
your
morning
time
and happy
today,
Friday.
for your precious time. We have DFA USEC Eduardo de Vega giving us the latest from the Middle East. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Ho. We are One News, all sides, all the time. Happy weekend.